The King and the Prince of Wales pay a surprise visit to the crowds queuing in London to attend the Queen's lying in state. The new King and the heir to the throne thanked people for coming and asked whether it had been cold waiting outside through the night. Queen Elizabeth II is lying in state in Westminster Hall for a third day in advance of the state funeral on Monday. The estimated waiting time to get into the hall is currently 14 hours, with people arriving all the time. And rehearsals have been held for the funeral procession in Windsor. Some of the details were overseen by the Queen before her death.
Plenty of preparation and planning's gone into this, clearly, to make sure the late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth, has the best that we can give her.
Hello and a very good afternoon. In the last hour, the King and the Prince of Wales have been to chat to people queuing in London to see the Queen's lying in state. They thanked people for waiting through the night to get into Westminster Hall before the state funeral on Monday. People hoping to view the Queen's coffin have been warned that the queue could be closed again today if it reaches capacity. The waiting time is currently 14 hours, with the queue stretching 5 miles along the River Thames to Southwark Park. Last night, King Charles, the Princess Royal, Prince Andrew and Prince Edward held a silent vigil by their mother's coffin. The Queen's 8 grandchildren, including Princes William and Harry, will hold their own vigil later today. Well, earlier today, the new King met emergency workers in London to thank them for their work in the run-up to Monday's funeral. And that was before he moved on to that surprise walkabout with his son, Prince William. Our correspondent Paul Adams has this report.
By day and night, the ritual continues. The third full day on which members of the public from far and wide have come to offer thanks and say goodbye. These people endured a long, cold night for the chance of a few brief moments. It's quiet, respectful. The atmosphere of reverence only punctuated briefly last night as a man tried to rush the coffin and was wrestled to the ground. Earlier, the late Queen's 4 children, all in uniform, mounted their own vigil. Tonight it'll be the turn of her 8 grandchildren, very public displays of private grief.
How humbling is that?
You got to see the whole family. It was incredible, absolutely amazing.
No, it was a very emotional moment, and that just added to the whole afternoon, evening. Unbelievable.
She's the only female we've ever had and will ever have on our planet that is known by everybody in the world, from the smallest island to the largest area on our planet. No, she's just the only one, our Queen. And that to me fills me with, just immense pride.
And with each passing day, more signs of round-the-clock preparations. This was Windsor in the early hours of the morning. Grenadier Guards accompanying the hearse that will carry the Queen's coffin back to the castle for Monday's final ceremonies. At Windsor's Victoria Barracks, representatives of all 3 services getting ready for something they, and most of us, have not seen before.
Plenty of preparation and planning's gone into this, clearly, to make sure the late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth, has the best that we can give her. And everything went exactly to plan, to be honest. Apart from the weather this morning being a bit nippy, it's all good.
At Lambeth Bridge, a warm welcome for the King and his eldest son as the two mingled with those waiting to pay respects to the Queen.
30 hours no sleep.
Did you do 30 hours?
Yeah.
You're very good on 30 hours.
These walkabouts already a hallmark of the new king's reign. It's here that he seems to be most relaxed and happy.
3 cheers for His Majesty!
Back at Westminster Hall, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was among world leaders paying respects this morning. Politicians, past and present, are all taking their turns. For 70 years, people came to London to see the Queen. They're still doing it today.
And Paul is with me. So many dignitaries, world leaders obviously expected on Monday, Paul, but concern about one particular leader who's invited.
That's right. You know, with 500 VIPs coming from 180 countries, it's perhaps inevitable that question marks will be raised about some of those people who have been invited. Obviously, a great deal of attention is being given to Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's de facto leader, who has been accused by many, including Western intelligence agencies, of involvement in the murder and dismemberment, let's not forget that, of a Saudi journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, back in 2018, something, of course, he has always denied. This is his first visit to Britain since then, and so some might see that as a kind of rehabilitation on the part of the British government. Certainly, human rights organisations are outraged. They've condemned what they see as the whitewashing of the appalling human rights records of Saudi Arabia and a number of other countries. They also point out, some of them, that Saudi Arabia is a country that's still involved in a brutal, long, endless war in Yemen, a war to which it is thought Britain has contributed around £23 billion worth of military equipment to Saudi Arabia. But, you know, I think if you did start going through that list and asking whether people's human rights records are everything they should be to justify being invited to the Queen's funeral, you might end up with a rather shorter list. There are other countries there, Bahrain, Qatar, over whom human rights questions have been raised in the past. And if you really want to be literal about this, what about countries like the United States of America that still practice the death penalty? You could go on and on and on. I think government officials would argue this is not the moment for those questions. Those questions will remain. This is not about rehabilitating the reputation of anyone.
Paul, thank you very much. Paul Adams. Well, let's go as well to our royal correspondent Sarah Campbell, because she joins me from Buckingham Palace. And lovely and informal scenes we've been witnessing in the last hour, Sarah, for the King. But there's many more formalities to come today as well.
Yeah, good afternoon, Jane. You just missed the cheers of the crowd as Prince William arrived back here at Buckingham Palace. We saw the Princess of Wales, Catherine, arrive just in the last hour, and they are inside, along, of course, with the King and the Queen Consort for a lunch reception with governors general from the realms. And this afternoon, the new King will have his first audiences with the Prime Ministers from some of those realms. Realms, of course, being countries of which he is now their head of state. So he'll meet the Prime Ministers of Canada, of New Zealand, of Australia, and of Jamaica this afternoon. And then this evening there will be another one of these poignant moments. We've had so many of them, haven't we, over the last week or so. Just a day after the Queen's children mounted a vigil around her coffin in Westminster Hall, her 8 grandchildren will do so this evening. So Prince William will be flanked by Princess Anne's 2 children, Zara Tyndall and Peter Phillips. Prince Harry will be there. He will be next to the Duke of York's daughters, Princess Beatrice and Eugenie, and Viscount Severn and Lady Louise, the Earl of Wessex's children, will be there as well. All of them will wear mourning coats or dark formal wear, apart from the King's 2 sons. We know that at his request, Prince William and Prince Harry will both wear military uniform when they form that 15-minute vigil around the Queen's coffin this evening.
Sarah, thank you. Sarah Campbell at Buckingham Palace. And let's return to the queue to see the lying in state. As I say, some suggestions, warnings, I suppose, that the queue could be paused again if it reaches capacity. We're not at that point right at the moment. This is the scene in Victoria Gardens. The waiting time, as we say, currently estimated at 14 hours. Let's join our correspondent Charlotte Gallagher, who is very near the front of the queue. Charlotte.
Jane, some very relieved people here. They've had a long night, definitely, in the queue. And just look at this behind me. It's probably the biggest airport-style security queue I've certainly ever seen. These people as well, they say they've been queuing for about 12 hours. And it's been bitterly cold. Lots of volunteers out overnight with blankets and hot drinks. But I think it's fair to say it's been a very, very long night.
Throughout the early hours, on one of the coldest nights since spring, a queue of thousands snaked its way through central London and beyond. Spirits are high, but temperatures have been plummeting, and some, well, are more prepared than others.
Cold, tiring, but yeah, worth it.
Hands up so they can be checked by security at the gate, please.
An army of volunteers are helping at every stage.
When we join Scouts, we have to say our promise, and part of that promise is to do our duty to the Queen, and this is our way of achieving that one last time. So it is an honour to be here, really.
And for the cold, tired and hungry, that help is appreciated.
I saw blankets and I was so cold, my body ached with shivering, so I was so grateful for it.
Some don't just come here for themselves, but for those who are no longer here. Lorraine's relatives served in the military.
It'd be nice to kind of come here and say to, you know, thank you for all your services and that, and to kind of recognise what she's done, and also for my male members in the family as well. So yeah, it's going to be a really special moment, and you know, something to remember as well. And I've actually got my brother's ashes with me today as well.
To finally see the Queen's coffin is overwhelming for many, saying thank you to a woman who is with us for so long.
Just built up, just waited for the moment to be in there, and yeah, it's just drawn, just had to go, felt just had to really. She was just beautiful and just lovely.
What an incredible out of body experience the whole thing is. I don't know, it's really hard to describe.
After queuing all night and paying respects to the Queen, it's time to say goodbye to new friends. But for those just joining the line, it's going to be a long, long wait. Charlotte Gallagher, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, people heading to London have been told to prepare for unprecedented demand for public transport as tens of thousands of people continue to arrive to pay their respects. Our correspondent Jane McCubbin has been meeting people making the trip.
This is an exodus.
OK, so have we all been to the toilet?
Gentlemen, last call for the 12:30 to London.
Hundreds of thousands of people are on the move. All heading to the capital. Bye. All with one purpose. In Sandbach service station on the M6, we go in search of those on a pilgrimage, and we find Leslie.
There's only 2,000 people going to the funeral, and you will be one of the 2,000.
I can't believe it. I've been invited. It's still in a bit of shock. So I was on my way back from IKEA on Sunday, and all of a sudden I get this call from the Cabinet Office in the car saying that in recognition of my recent award of MBE, because I haven't been invested yet, to go to an investiture, would I like to attend the funeral on the 19th? And I just can't believe it, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm absolutely blown away.
Hello.
In Rugby, the Richmond family have taken the kids out of school early to drive to London to lay flowers for the Queen.
You're ready to go, aren't you? This is our rainbow that we made, wasn't it, for the Queen? Yeah. So you've got to hold on to that. Willow was quite affected by it. She is very taken with the Queen and her handbags and her dresses, and
you wanted the kids
we wanted them to be a part of this
moment.
Yeah. So we made a rainbow, didn't you, of all her favourite things. So what have we got?
The crown.
And the crown and the teacups and her lovely Philip.
I'm happy and sad, and I'm excited to go and see the Queen.
I try not to cry. She was just the great nan of the nation, really. Earlier, I think. photographer.
Team Richmond, go, go, go!
Do a big wave. It's a long way to London.
While the Richmonds set off by car, ticket sales to London are up across the country. National Express say their London sales are up by 40% this week.
Have you brought any food?
I've got a bottle of water.
That's it?
Yeah.
Barbara from Salford is travelling alone and she's travelling light.
How long are you planning on going for, Barbara?
As long as it takes.
But show us your bag.
This is all she's packed.
This is instead of a hotel room in London.
It is. And it's got a... I think I need to go and see her. I need to walk past. I've been crying for days. Never been to London before, so it's a new adventure. If it didn't make this journey, then I'd be always wondering in the back of my mind, I should have gone, I should have done it.
We're off to today, anyway, nice.
To see the Queen?
Oh, lovely.
I need to do it, for me.
Last call for the 12:30, please.
Bye. Stay safe.
There will be grief, but for Barbara, the shared experience of heading to the capital promises more friendship and unity.
Jane McCubbin with that report. Let's return to the front of the queue and Charlotte Gallagher. Charlotte.
Lots of people have been telling me really lovely stories, Jane, of why they've come here today. I met one family from South Wales. They set off at 2 o'clock in the morning and they wanted to be here for their grandma who died, and they even brought a photo of her, and they said she would have wanted them to come, and they felt like bringing a photo of her was her paying her respects as well. Lots of people coming for very different reasons. Let's talk to two of the people that have been in the queue for quite a long time, Corinne and her son Josh. Corinne, obviously we can see from your beret and your medal that you used to be in the armed forces. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, I used to be a chef in the Royal Logistics Corps, and I served out in Optelic in Iraq several years ago now, but I've come here today because this is my way of saying goodbye to the Queen in my respects for her and swearing my oath to her at the beginning of my military career.
She was your Commander-in-Chief.
Absolutely, and for me this gives me closure in that chapter. We've been here a very long time, since 11:30 last night, and we're nearly at the end, so I'm starting to get a little bit overwhelmed by the moment.
And Josh, you're 13. How's it been for you overnight?
It's been a great experience. I mean, met strangers in the queue, which, I mean, I've never met them before and become relatively good friends from now. I mean, obviously it's been a very, very long time, so it's been very taxing.
Are you ready for bed now? Maybe a nap this afternoon?
Yeah, definitely.
And Corinne, why was it important for you to bring your son down as well?
Well, Josh actually obviously is fully aware of my military career, and it was his choice. He wanted to come, and I think he also wanted to support his mum in going on this journey with me. And we've had a long night, but an enjoyable night equally, and I think we'll never forget this moment in time, because again, the Queen's reign was so long, and it's just a really special occasion for us both.
And you can see by the number of veterans in the queue just how much she meant to you all. It's been really lovely to see.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's everywhere you look, there's medals and berets, and I just think probably most military personnel feel exactly the same as myself in the fact that the Queen was our Commander-in-Chief, and, you know, we just want to say our final farewells to her.
Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
I do want to add, Jane, that they haven't lost their place in the queue by coming to talk to us. I didn't want anyone watching to worry about that. They're going to go back into the queue and they're going to be by the Queen's coffin very, very soon. We're hearing 2,000 people an hour are joining the queue. Huge, huge numbers want to be here.
Lovely. Charlotte, thank you very much. Charlotte Gallagher there. Near the front of that queue. Well, around the UK, the home nations are each making preparations for the funeral on Monday. Scotland, and in particular Royal Balmoral, of course, held a special significance for the Queen. And having had an opportunity to pay their respects at the lying in state in St Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh, people across Scotland are now getting ready to bid a final farewell to the monarch, as Conor Gillies reports.
High in the hills above Balmoral, a lone piper's lament for a local. A solemn song for a much-missed monarch.
Which is a big part for the community and all that. We recently just played for a couple of weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago and that, so it was really a great honour to do that. I think we would probably be the last band that we would have played for her.
Just as the Queen was always part of their lives here in Royal Deeside, they too are intertwined in this journey on her death. And while the ceremonial crescendo comes in London for the funeral on Monday, here a sober, silent, subtle moment is planned. No pomp, no ceremony, because after all, she, Elizabeth II, was seen here as one of their own.
Yes, it's a very special place in the village.
Striking the right tone, important for David, who's lived here since he was born.
Many people have said to me that it almost feels as though they've lost a member of their family. It's that close a connection. And I feel that they probably want to be at home, perhaps on Monday, with their own families.
Down the coast in the Aberdeenshire fishing village of Gourdon, a different take. At the pub, Johnny will be showing proceedings on the screens, a community event with a spread of food.
It is most definitely a wake. It's in no way can you term it as a celebration. People will be coming in. There won't be any music or anything on apart from that, which is accompanying, it's like the TV service.
We also had the Queen attend the cathedral on several occasions. She would attend often for national events.
Tales of times gone by here at what's thought to be Scotland's biggest cathedral.
We come to this significant pew in the cathedral, and in some senses it's more a throne than a pew, because this is where Her Majesty the Queen would sit. We were conscious of the fact that there were many things happening in many places, but we thought that it was important to have a period and a time of preparation. So on Sunday evening at 7 o'clock here in Glasgow Cathedral, we're going to have a service of preparation.
Back in Balmoral, the land she loved. The people here with a personal, unique royal perspective. A connection that will never fade in life or death. Conor Gillies, BBC News.
Now, just a reminder that if you can't travel to London but you would like to pay your respects, worth reminding you that the BBC is offering a continuous 24-hour view of the Queen's lying in state. It's very easy to find that. It's right on the front page of the iPlayer, or you can access it on the BBC News website and app as well. It's also being shown on BBC Parliament and on the red button. Really is perhaps quite surprisingly moving watching that continuous live footage there from inside Westminster Hall, and that is available 24 hours a day. Now, we will talk more about the Queen later in the programme, but we will also take a look at the day's other main stories, and we start with Ukraine because President Volodymyr Zelensky says investigations into possible Russian war crimes are continuing in the city of Izium. Bodies are being exhumed from a mass grave on the edge of the city, which was recently retaken from Russian forces. Ukrainian officials say more than 440 people seem to be buried there. Our correspondent Hugo Bechega has been monitoring events from the capital, Kyiv.
In Izium's pine forest, as bodies are recovered, the truth is beginning to emerge. This burial site has more than 400 graves now being reopened. The horrors of Russia's war are coming to surface. Investigators say the first body they exhumed was of a civilian who had a rope around his neck. In one grave, they found the bodies of around 20 Ukrainian soldiers. Their work here has just started, but officials already say that almost all these people died because of Russia.
According to our data, almost everyone died because of Russian soldiers. Some were killed, some were tortured, some were hit in Russian air or artillery strikes.
Izum was liberated from Russian control just days ago. This is now the site of a war crimes investigation. Ukraine is determined to discover the identities of the victims and what happened to them.
There's already clear evidence of torture, humiliating treatment of people. There's evidence that Russian soldiers, whose positions were not far from this place, shot at the buried just for fun. The world must react to all this. Russia has repeated in Izum what it did in Bucha.
Ukraine says it's going ahead with its counter-offensive. It's forced Russia to leave dozens of towns and villages in the northeast. It hopes this will be a turning point in the conflict, but it still faces massive challenges. President Putin says his plans haven't changed and that Russia isn't in a hurry.
Our offensive operations in Donbas itself do not stop. They keep going at a slow pace, but the Russian army is gradually occupying new territories.
Today, Ukraine celebrates Rescuers' Day. In Izum, many will be at work, digging the ground in search of answers. As Ukrainian forces continue with their counteroffensive, President Biden has again warned President Putin against using nuclear or unconventional weapons to try to turn the tide of the war in Russia's favor. In an interview with the American broadcaster CBS, President Biden said the US response would be consequential, though he didn't give details. This morning, a report by the UK Defense Ministry said Ukraine was going ahead with its offensive in the northeast and the Russian forces had created a defensive line to defend one of its main resupply routes in the region. Jane?
Hugo Bachega, thank you very much there in Kyiv. Hundreds of people have gathered outside New Scotland Yard in London to protest about the shooting of an unarmed black man earlier this month. Many of the people there are carrying placards showing a photo of 24-year-old Chris Cubber. His family have accused the Metropolitan Police of racism and the police watchdog has launched an investigation. Our correspondent Celestina Olulade is at Scotland Yard. Celestina.
Jane, you join me as crowds continue to grow here, and there are people here being supported by the Labour MP Belrabir Addy and Jeremy Corbyn, who have addressed crowds. Now, we know that 24-year-old Chris Cubber was unarmed when he was fatally shot by a Met Police officer on the 5th of September. And we know from the police, what the police say is that Chris was driving a car that had been previously linked to a firearms incident, but the family have told us that the car was not registered to Chris. He was borrowing the car from a friend. Now, in the last few minutes, one of Chris's cousins has made an impassioned speech calling for the IOPC to meet its demands, including a shorter time frame for the IOPC to conclude their investigation. We understand that that investigation could take between 6 and 9 months before it is concluded, and the Met say that they will continue to work with the IOPC on that investigation.
Celestina, thank you. Celestina Olulade there at Scotland Yard. Now, as promised, we will talk more about our main story. The funeral of Queen Elizabeth will be held on Monday, following her death at the age of 96. Our home editor, Mark Easton, has been looking back at the huge changes in society that the Queen lived through as the longest reigning monarch in British history.
Into the grey of post-war austerity, a beautiful young woman was presented as a new beginning for an impoverished kingdom and its crumbling empire.
Quivers down the backbone.
Queen Elizabeth II took her throne amid social upheaval. With increasing tensions at home and declining influence abroad, a huge responsibility was placed upon the shoulders of the young Queen. The ambition was for a new Elizabethan age. Some feared she was doomed to fail, but Elizabeth was nothing if not determined. In the 60s, the Queen became a bridgehead between continuity and change. In science and in culture, Elizabeth walked a line between tradition and modernity.
Her Majesty's a pretty nice girl, but she doesn't have a lot to say.
Quietly and uncontroversially, Elizabeth worked to ensure the monarchy was not left behind by the change sweeping across her kingdom.
She seemed pleasant enough to us, made us relaxed.
Didn't want to make her mine.
Amid the social conflict of the 70s, the Queen ruled a less deferential kingdom. A time when authority and the established order was being challenged. But predictions of a wave of republicanism proved unfounded. And marking 25 years on the throne, the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977 was a moment when the nation came together to celebrate the monarchy.
When I was 21, I pledged my life to the service of our people. Although that vow was made in my salad days when I was green in judgment, I do not regret nor retract one word of it.
Stars in your eyes, little one, where do you go?
The 1980s saw the Queen encourage the next generation of royals to take centre stage.
The land of make-believe.
The decade saw the nation at war, not least with itself. But the exhibition of family values threatened to become a pantomime as the strains of royal relationships emerged. A soap opera with the Queen as long-suffering matriarch.
Everybody hurts.
4 decades after ascending her throne, the pressures on Elizabeth became incendiary.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure.
Intimate holiday pictures of the Duchess of York in today's...
Any hope of presenting the royals as a model family was sustained almost entirely by a monarch who kept private feelings separate from public duties. But her strategy of impassive figurehead was to be sorely tested.
A short while ago, Buckingham Palace confirmed the death of Diana, Princess of Wales.
Diana's death prompted an extraordinary emotional outpouring,
Goodbye, England's rose.
with demands that the Queen share her personal grief with the world. Elizabeth, though, maintained her distance.
Where lives were torn apart.
True to her conviction of what a monarch should be, but it was a significant gamble in a society that increasingly equated authenticity with wearing your heart on your sleeve. A critical test of relevance for the monarchy and for Elizabeth was her Golden Jubilee in 2002. Some predicted she would be exposed as an aging queen unable to adapt, out of date and out of touch in a new millennium.
The Jubilee girl is here, Pasha!
Contrary to many commentators' expectations, vast numbers joined in the festivities. To survive tumultuous change, the magic ingredient appeared to be consistency. By the 2010s, 4/5 of Elizabeth's subjects had never known another monarch. At the opening of the Olympic Games in London, organisers placed the Queen centre stage in telling the story of Britain. A global audience saw a monarch with the self-confidence to be part of an elaborate joke.
Good evening, Sir Bond.
Without ever losing her dignity.
Good evening, Your Majesty.
She had become a national treasure, a jewel in her own crown.
My government will hold a referendum on membership of the European Union.
But 4 years on, and Elizabeth found herself on the throne of a disunited kingdom. The Queen sought to emphasise her neutrality. The palace horrified at claims she had views. Amid Brexit rancour, her message was of love.
The cumulative impact of thousands of small acts of goodness can be bigger than we imagine.
God save
the final decade of the Queen's long life was tinged with regret and loss. Philip, her liege man, her strength and stay, was no longer at her side. A pandemic of dishonour and disappointment arrived at the door of the House of Windsor. Elizabeth's health began to suffer. But as she physically withdrew from public life, her importance as a national figurehead became more pronounced. Across 8 decades, the Elizabethan age was the frame in which the nation's affairs were set, and Elizabeth, the golden thread through the history of her kingdom. A great queen, with values for all time.
Mark Easton with that report. Well, the horse racing community has said it has lost its best friend following the Queen's death. The sport was, of course, one of the Queen's greatest passions. Her horse Estimate won the Gold Cup at Royal Ascot in 2013. Our sports correspondent Lizzie Greenwood-Hughes has more.
After working closely with the Queen as her racing and bloodstock advisor for more than 2 decades, there are very few people outside of the royal household who knew Her Majesty as well as John Warren.
She was so clear-thinking. She was a tremendous listener and always got to the punchline. And she was able to see the best in people. And she was very pragmatic.
The Queen spoke to John Warren several times a week and was with him at Balmoral the weekend before she passed away.
It's comforting to know that right at the end of her life, with all her family around, coming and going, and being able to talk horses right to the end, was a very important memory I will have of the Queen. That, in a way, is the most comforting thing for people to know, that the Queen was in a really happy, good place to the very end, which is how extraordinary to live a lovely, incredible, long, full life right to the very, very end. Quite remarkable.
As the son-in-law to the Queen's former racing manager, Lord Porchester, John Warren is long established in the royal racing family. But since taking over in 2001, he guided Her Majesty to some of her most memorable successes, including the Ascot Gold Cup winning filly Estimate, whom she bred.
The memory that will stay with me forever is the Queen's eyes welling up with tears, and the emotion in her face was something that, even knowing her for nearly 40 years, that I'd never seen that emotion so relevant. And that was such a joyful occasion. And then at 87, I think the Queen was, she nearly ran down to the winning enclosure. I've never seen her more animated, and her adrenaline took over. And we got down from the stands and went out into the paddock, and the crowd were quite remarkable. They lifted the Queen to the winning enclosure.
Over her lifetime, the Queen bred and owned more than 1,000 winners, but it's clear she loved the taking part just as much as the winning.
The Queen adored naming her horses, and being as intellectual as she was, she would spend a lot of her spare time working out the name of the sire and the name of the dam, and trying to find a clever name for the horse that related to how it was bred.
It's too early to discuss royal racing succession. The Queen Consort Camilla has been mooted as the obvious option. But for now, the sport is still coming to terms with the loss of what many have called racing's best friend. Lizzie Greenwood-Hughes, BBC News.
Well, let's just show you the scenes again in various parts of central London, because wherever you look, there are queues. People just keep coming to join the queue to see the Queen lying in state. She lies in state until early on Monday morning, of course. A queue, perhaps a wait rather, of about 16 hours is what is currently predicted. As we look at these shots, let's just get the thoughts of our royal correspondent, Sarah Campbell. And the crowds delighted, Sarah, when the King and the new heir to the throne arrived to chat to them.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you can see the pictures there. This is a huge logistical operation, security, and the King this morning at Lambeth police station, rather, this afternoon, he spoke to emergency workers, he thanked emergency workers, and then afterwards he was met outside by his son, the Prince of Wales, and as you say, they went on a walkabout, shaking hands with people who had been standing for hours in the queue waiting, obviously didn't expect to see the King and the Prince of Wales, and it was clearly a very special moment for many of them. Lots of shouts of God Save the King, lots of shouts of God Save the Prince of Wales. And they must have spent, what, 15 minutes walking up the crowd, saying thank you, just showing their appreciation that so many people from so many places across the country have made the journey here, standing for hours. Was watching Prince William there, the Prince of Wales, and what a moment. Then afterwards, both of them came back here to Buckingham Palace because it is a busy day of meeting Prime Ministers, meeting Governor Generals, and then this evening there will be a vigil of the Queen's 8 grandchildren around the coffin in Westminster Hall. So Prince William will be joined by Prince Harry and the other 6 grandchildren for what I'm sure will be another poignant moment among so many we've had over the past week. Jane.
Sarah Campbell, thank you, at Buckingham Palace. And as we reach the end of the programme, let's take a look at the weather prospects. Ben Rich is with me, and very striking how many times Prince William asked those people in the crowd whether they were rather cold.
Well, it was rather cold,
yes.
Jane, for those waiting in the queue last night. Temperatures in central London last night dropped to around 7 degrees, but it wasn't as cold as it was in some other parts of the country. In fact, parts of Wales, England, Northern Ireland, Scotland dropped close to or even below freezing. There was a touch of frost for some, the coldest start we've had for quite some time, but that has led to a beautifully sunny day, as we've seen from those pictures in London today. Blue skies overhead. It's not quite that straightforward everywhere. We've got more clouds streaming southwards across Scotland with the odd shower. This brisk breeze is still blowing some showers into the coast of Norfolk. Generally, the best of the sunshine this afternoon will be found across southern and southwestern parts of the UK, but not particularly warm, maybe 19 in Cardiff, generally 14 to 18 degrees. But for London, as I've mentioned, sunny skies overhead today. We will tend to see a bit more in the way of cloud working in through tomorrow and indeed into Monday. It's not completely out of the question that cloud could bring the odd spot of rain, but no more than that. And actually, that cloud already starting to stream into the northern half of the UK overnight tonight. 1 or 2 showers. Where you stick with the cloud, a slightly milder night than last night. Coldest weather across parts of South Wales, the south of England, out in the countryside. I wouldn't be at all surprised to get down to around 2 or 3 degrees. Tomorrow, generally more cloud in the mix. A band of cloud pushing southwards with a few showers. Best of the sunshine down towards the southwest, South Wales. Also brightening up in northeast Scotland later in the day, but just 12 degrees there for Aberdeen, 18 for Cardiff and for Plymouth. And then we look ahead to Monday, the day, of course, of the Queen's state funeral, with high pressure strongly in charge across most of the UK. And that means certainly for England and Wales, a lot of dry weather, but with increasing amounts of cloud through the day. A weak weather front bringing some rain across Northern Ireland and into the western side of Scotland. Temperatures of 14 in Aberdeen, a high of 20 in Plymouth. That's all for now. Jane.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. Ben Rich with your weather prospects. And that is it from the Lunchtime team. You can keep up to date with all the developments on the BBC News channel throughout the afternoon. Of course, the next news on BBC One is at 5:10 this evening. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.